The rain hammered the tin roof of my Portland studio like 1,000 tiny accusations, each drop a reminder that secrets never stay buried in this town. I hit record on the podcast console, my voice steady despite the storm churning inside me. And that's when she called in, anonymous, voice like smoked honey over gravel, spilling a confession that cracked my world open before I even knew her name. "I've loved women since I was old enough to understand shame," she whispered. And in that moment, the line between listener and confessor blurred forever. I was Elsie Harlan, or at least that's the name I went by on the airwaves, 32, single, and stubbornly carving out a corner of the air in this fog-shrouded city where the Willamette River carried away more regrets than it did salmon. My podcast, Whispers from the Edge, had started as a lark 3 years back, a way to fill the void left by a string of bad dates and worse jobs. Now it pulled in listeners from the damp corners of the Pacific Northwest, folks tuning in from cramped apartments in Seattle to sprawling farms in rural Idaho, all hungry for stories that didn't sugarcoat the raw edges of living. We talked love, loss, the kind of quiet rebellions that society pretends don't exist. And on that stormy Tuesday in October, with the wind rattling the loose pane in my window like it had a grudge, her voice cut through the static like a blade. "Caller, you're live," I said, leaning into the mic, my fingers drumming the scarred oak desk that had seen better days. The studio was a converted garage behind my craftsman bungalow on the east side, exposed brick walls lined with faded Polaroids of guest speakers, a sagging bookshelf crammed with dog-eared copies of Audre Lorde and James Baldwin, and the faint scent of chamomile tea gone cold. Outside, Portland was unraveling in sheets of rain, the kind that turned streets into rivers and minds into mirrors of doubt. I'd been fielding calls all evening. The usual mix: a trans kid from Eugene grappling with family holidays, a queer veteran in Tacoma nursing ghosts from the front lines. But she was different. No preamble. No nervous cough. Just those words, laced with a drawl that hinted at somewhere drier, dustier than our perpetual drizzle. "I've loved women since I was old enough to understand shame," she repeated, as if testing the weight of it aloud. Her voice was low, deliberate, the kind that wrapped around your ribs and squeezed. I could picture her in some shadowed room, phone pressed to her ear like a lifeline, the anonymous veil of the hotline giving her just enough cover to breathe. "But it's not the loving that's killing me, Elsie. It's the pretending." Every Sunday at church in Monroe, Oregon, I smile through the sermons on sin, while inside I'm screaming for a touch that feels like home. Monroe. The name landed like a stone in still water. I'd driven through there once, on a whim road trip down Highway 20, past the apple orchards and the clapboard houses with their peeling paint and prying eyes. A town of 5,000 souls, where the mill had closed a decade ago and folks clung to traditions like driftwood in a flood. Conservative roots ran deep there, intertwined with the logging history, men in flannel, women in floral dresses, everyone knowing everyone else's business before breakfast. I'd felt the weight of those stairs even as a passerby, an outsider with a rainbow sticker on my bumper. For her, it must have been a cage woven from whispers and expectations. I leaned back in my creaky chair, the leather protesting softly, and let her words settle. That's what I did best on the show. Listen. Really listen. Until the silence between us hummed with possibility. "Tell me more," I urged, my own voice softening, laced with the empathy I'd honed from too many nights alone. What does that pretending look like for you? Pause. Then a sigh that carried the miles between us. It looks like my father's ranch. Elsie. 300 acres of wheat and regret. Where I've been the dutiful daughter since Mama passed when I was 12. Harlan, that's my last name. Ironic as hell. Expects me to marry the banker's son. Keep the family name pure. But pure to them means straight as the furrows in the field. I've buried letters under the floorboards. Poems I wrote to a girl in high school who vanished after graduation. And now there's this woman at the community college where I teach English Lit. She's fire and ink. Everything I'm not allowed to want. But every time she brushes past me in the hallway, I feel like I'm drowning in what could be. Harlan. My pulse stuttered at the echo of my own fabricated surname, a nod to the fierce aunt I'd never met. The one who'd fled Kentucky for California in the 60s and never looked back. Coincidence? Sure. But it felt like fate's cruel joke, binding us across the ether. I swallowed, tasting the bitterness of chamomile on my tongue. That shame you're carrying, I said. It's not yours to own. There's the ones who built walls around love like it's something to be fenced in. What would you say to that woman if the world wasn't watching? Her laugh was a brittle thing, like autumn leaves underfoot. I'd say her name like a prayer. But names are dangerous here. They stick. They scar. We talked for 40 minutes after that. Her voice weaving through tales of stolen glances in the college library, of nights spent driving the backroads with the radio cranked to drown out the ache. She quoted Whitman, twisting his leaves of grass into metaphors for hidden desires, and I found myself nodding, as if she could see me through the line. When the clock ticked toward the hour, I hated to let her go. Call back anytime, I murmured. This space is yours. The line clicked dead, and the rain seemed louder, insistent. I sat there long after the red light on the console faded, replaying her words in my head. Harlan from Monroe, anonymous, yet already etched into me like a half-remembered dream. Little did I know, that dream was about to bleed into waking life, pulling me under with a current I couldn't fight. The next morning dawned gray and grudging, the kind of Portland light that filtered through clouds like smoke from a distant fire. I nursed a black coffee at the Formica counter of my kitchen, scrolling through emails from listeners while the city hummed to life outside, bikes whirring past, the distant wail of a siren cutting through the mist. Whispers had a modest following, enough to pay the bills with sponsorships from indie bookstores and queer-owned cafes, but it was the connections that kept me tethered. Her call lingered, though, a ghost in the steam rising from my mug. I fired off a tweet from the show's account. Tonight's whisper. Love isn't a sin. Hiding it is the real theft. What's your hidden truth? Whispers from the. By evening, the responses flooded in, stories of first kisses in church basements, of family dinners choked down with unspoken grief. But none matched the pull of hers. I prepped for the live show, queuing up playlists of Joan Baez and Brandi Carlile, the women whose voices had soundtracked my own coming out at 25. Back when I'd packed a duffel and left my folks' place in rural Washington without a backward glance. Dad had called it a phase. Mom had cried into her apron. I'd built whispers from those ashes, a beacon for the one still smoldering. She called again that Thursday, right as the clock struck 8. "It's me," she said simply. No need for the anonymous prefix. Her voice was steadier now. warmed by familiarity. The one with the ranch and the regrets. Harlan, I breathed, the name slipping out like a secret I'd been keeping from myself. Felt right. Intimate. Even as thunder rumbled in the distance. We dove deeper this time, her recounting the college woman's laugh. How it echoed like wind chimes in a storm. Me sharing fragments of my own scars. The ex who'd ghosted me after her family found out. We're all whispering in the dark, I told her. Hoping someone hears. Over the next weeks, she became a fixture. Twice a week. Her calls bookend the show. Her stories unfolding like chapters in a novel neither of us could put down. She spoke of Monroe's fault lines, the old money families like hers. Landowners who'd traced their lineage to the Homestead Acts. Clashing against the new wave of artists and activists trickling in from the coast. Class here isn't just money, she said one night. Voice thick with the chill of an early frost. It's bloodlines. Beliefs. I'm supposed to marry up. Or at least sideways, into the kind of life that keeps the gates locked. I pictured her then. Not as a voice but as flesh, pacing a creaky porch under a harvest moon. The silhouette of silos against the sky. Her hands, callous from helping on the ranch, twisting a frayed hem. And that woman? Press. Heart thudding against my ribs. Does she know you're listening to her like this? A hesitation. Then. Not yet. But God. Elsie. I want to. I want to stop being the shadow. The confession hung there. Electric. For the first time, the line felt too thin a barrier. After the show, I lingered by the phone, thumb hovering over her number. She'd given it to me off-air. A trust that felt like handing over a key. Instead, I texted, "Your words tonight saved someone out there. Maybe even me." Her reply came swift. They saved me first. Fall deepen. Leaves turning the streets to fire. Portland's queer scene buzzed, art walks in the Pearl District. Open mics at the Alberta Street pubs, but I found myself withdrawing. Nights spent replaying her recordings, editing them into episodes that drew record listens. Listeners wrote in, "That Harlan caller? She's every one of us." I smiled at that, but unease gnawed. What if the town caught wind? Monroe wasn't Portland. Anonymity there was a fragile thing. One crisp November evening, as I walked home from a reading at Powell's, a stack of queer memoirs under my arm, my phone buzzed. Her text. Driving to the city tomorrow for a conference. Coffee. My breath caught. The world tilting. This was it. The whisper stepping into light. I typed back, "Say when." We met at a hole-in-the-wall cafe off Burnside. The kind with mismatched mugs and the rich aroma of espresso cutting through the damp air. She was waiting at a corner table, nursing a latte. Her dark hair pulled into a loose braid that spoke of hurried mornings on the ranch. Close. She was all quiet intensity, hazel eyes flecked with gold. A faint scar above her lip from a childhood fall off a horse. "Elsie," she said, standing, and the way my name left her lips made the room spin. "Harlan," I echoed, sliding into the seat across from her. No last names needed. We'd built a world from first ones alone. Conversation flowed like the river outside. Her conference on regional literature. My latest episode on forbidden desires. But beneath it, a current pulled. The brush of her fingers as she passed the sugar. The way her gaze held mine without flinching. "You're not what I imagined," she admitted. a smile tugging her mouth. Better or worse? I teased. Heart pounding. Real. The word landed soft. Profound. We talked until the barista flipped the sign to closed, rain pattering the windows like applause. Outside, under the awning, she hugged me goodbye, brief, electric, her scent of earth and vanilla lingering. This doesn't have to be the end of the call, she murmured. It wasn't. Texts turned to late-night talks, her voice now a constant in my earbuds as I jogged the waterfront trails. She sent photos, golden fields at dusk, a worn copy of The Price of Salt dog-eared on her nightstand. I reciprocated with shots of my studio, the neon glow of a dive bar sign. Desire simmered, unspoken but insistent, a heat that made every goodbye ache. Then, one December night, as snow dusted the cascades visible from my window, she called not for the show but for me. Elsie, she whispered, voice trembling. I told her. The woman at the college. About the feelings. My breath fogged the glass. And she kissed me. In the empty classroom after hours. It was like breathing for the first time. Joy laced her words. But so did fear. But Harlan Sr. found out. He locked my keys in the safe. Says it's for my own good. Until I come to my senses. Rage flared in me. Hot and helpless. You're not a child. You deserve. I know. A sob broke through. But leaving means losing everything. The ranch. My students. The only home I've known. We talked until dawn. Her resolve fraying like old rope. By morning, she decided. A weekend away. Just us. In a cabin I'd found near Mount Hood. To figure this out, she said. Together, as I packed, folding flannel shirts into my duffel, excitement warred with dread. This was no longer whispers, it was a reckoning. And in Monroe's shadow, reckonings had a way of drawing blood. The drive to the cabin wound through fir-choked passes, the road a ribbon of blacktop slick with melting snow. Harlan sat shotgun in my battered Subaru, her profile etched against the window, jaw set, eyes tracing the white-capped peaks like they held answers in their folds. We'd left Portland at first light, the city receding in the rearview like a half-remembered life. And now, with the radio murmuring folk tunes, silence stretched between us, heavy with the unsaid. I'd glanced at her a dozen times already, noting the way her fingers twisted the hem of her wool sweater, the faint bruise of sleeplessness under her eyes. This trip was her escape hatch, a stolen breath before the world closed in again. Penny for your thoughts, I said finally, as we crested Timothy Lake, the water a mirror of slate beneath the overcast sky. She turned, her smile tentative, like sunlight piercing clouds. Just wondering if this is what freedom tastes like. Bitter. Maybe. But alive. Her hand found mine on the gear shift. Warm and sure. And in that touch, the miles melted away. We arrived at the cabin by noon, a weathered A-frame tucked into a meadow. Smoke curling from the stone chimney where I'd asked the caretaker to lay a fire. Inside, it smelled of pine resin and possibility, a stone hearth, a kitchenette with mismatched mugs, a loft bedroom with a quilt that promised warmth against the coming chill. We unpacked in companionable quiet, her laughter bubbling up when she unearthed the six-pack of local IPA I'd stashed in the cooler. "Rebel," she teased, popping a cap and handing it over. We clinked bottles on the porch, the view sprawling, evergreens bowing under fresh snow, the distant call of a raven slicing the air. Conversation meandered from safe harbors, her favorite passages in Carson McCullers, the way teaching freshman Dickinson made her feel like a co-conspirator in rebellion. But as dusk bled purple across the sky, the deeper currents surfaced. "Tell me about her," I said, poking at the fire we'd built, sparks dancing like fireflies. "The woman who started all this." Harlan settled on the rug, knees drawn up, the flames casting golden flickers on her face. "Lena. She's a painter, adjunct faculty from Seattle. Bold lines, colors that bruise, her work hangs in the college gallery. All raw emotion no one dares name." Her voice softened, laced with longing. "That kiss. It wasn't just lips. It was permission." Jealousy flickered in me, sharp as a thorn, but I tamped it down. This wasn't about possession, it was about unraveling the knots she'd carried for years. "And now? With your father. Now it's war." She stared into the fire, the light hollowing her cheeks. "He grew up on that land. Elsie fought tooth and nail to keep it after the recession hit the mills. To him, legacy is blood and borders, straight, white, unyielding. Mama was the only softness he allowed, and when cancer took her, he armored up twice over." Finding those letters I wrote to my high school crush, it was like I'd betrayed the dead. I moved closer, our shoulders brushing, the heat of the fire mingling with hers. "You're not betraying anyone. You're claiming yourself." My words hung there, earnest but edged with my own ghosts, the memory of my mother's tears, my father's silence when I'd come out over Thanksgiving turkey. Portland had been my reinvention, but scars don't fade, they just learn to breathe. She leaned into me then, head on my shoulder, and we sat like that as the night deepened, the cabin a cocoon against the wind's low moan. Dinner was simple, stew from a can, heated on the wood stove, eaten cross-legged on the floor with stories for seasoning. She spoke of Monroe's underbelly, the annual harvest fair where gossip flowed freer than cider, the way queer kids vanished into the cities or deeper into closets. "There's a bar on the outskirts," she confessed. "The Rusty Spur. Dive joint for loggers. But on off nights, it's ours." I went once, after college, danced with a girl who smelled like sawdust and secrets. Woke up the next morning vowing never again. "Why?" asked. Though I knew the answer, the pull of duty, the gravity of family. Fear. Simple. Stark. Her eyes met mine, vulnerable in the firelight. Of becoming the story they tell at potlucks. The Harlan girl gone wrong. That night, in the loft, sleep evaded us both. The quilt was a tangle of limbs and whispers, her breath warm against my neck as we traced the boundaries of this new terrain. No rush, no script, just hands learning curves, lips brushing in tentative exploration. It was revelation, slow and sacred, the salt of her skin, the hitch in her breath when I murmured her name. "Harlan," I said again and again, like incantation, until it lost its shape and became us. Dawn found us entwined, snow blanketing the world outside in hush. We ventured out mid-morning. Snowshoes creaking over the crust. The forest a cathedral of white and shadow. She laughed as we built a lopsided snow woman, crowning her with pine boughs and a scarf pilfered from my pack. To freedom, Harlan toasted with a swig from her thermos of spiked cocoa, cheeks flushed from cold and something deeper. But even in that idyll, fissures showed. Her phone, silenced but insistent, buzzed in her pocket, text from home. No doubt, her father's stern missives or the concerned probes of neighbors. She ignored them at first, but by afternoon, as we trudged back, one slipped through. A voicemail played on speaker. Her father's voice gravelly with worry. Clara, that's her given name. The one she hates, come home. We can fix this. Lena's trouble, you know that. Clara Harlan. The full name hit like a revelation, stripping the anonymity we'd clung to. She paled, pocketing the phone. He thinks it's a phase. Like I can plow it under with the winter wheat. Rage simmered in me anew. But I swallowed it, drawing her into a hug that smelled of pine and promise. You're more than his daughter. You're the voice that called me in the dark. We drove back Sunday evening. The cabin shrinking in the mirror. A brief Eden we'd stolen. Portland welcomed us with its neon hum. Rain sluicing the streets like tears unshed. My door. She lingered. Kissed lingering longer than goodbye should. This isn't over, she whispered, fingers tracing my jaw. I want more calls. More you. Days blurred into a rhythm of longing, her texts at odd hours, recounting tense dinners where her father extolled the virtues of the banker's son, Elias Crow, a widower with a steady hand and eyes that never wandered. He's salt of the earth, Harlan quoted dryly, which means boring as dust. I'd laugh. But the undercurrent chilled, the pressure mounting. Her resolve tested. Christmas loomed, Portland's lights twinkling like defiant stars. I hosted a listener meetup at a queer bookstore in Hawthorne, stories shared over mulled wine. But my mind wandered to Monroe's frostbitten fields. She called that night, voice muffled by static. Elias proposed. Publicly. At the tree lighting. Everyone clapped like it was scripted. My stomach dropped. And you? Said I'd think on it. Pause. Heavy as lead. Elsie. I need you here. Just once. Show me I can choose differently. The invitation was a spark to tinder. I booked a flight to Eugene the next day. Rental car to Monroe. A pilgrimage into her world. As the plane banked over the Cascades, clouds parting to reveal the valley's patchwork, fear coiled in my gut. This wasn't my town. I was the outsider. The Portland liberal with opinions sharper than their pitchforks. But for her, I'd walk fire. Monroe greeted me with bone-chilling wind. The main street strung with garlands that seemed more noose than festive. Harlan Clara, in this skin, waited at the edge of town. In the parking lot of the community college. Her truck a relic from the ranch. She looked smaller here. Swallowed by the landscape's vast indifference. But her hug was fierce. Grounding. You came, she breathed. As if it were miracle. We drove to the outskirts. The Harlan land unfolding, barbed wire fencing the acres. A weathered barn sagging under ivy. The house was grand in its decay. Victorian bones with a wraparound porch. Porch swing creaking in the breeze. Inside, it smelled of aged oak and simmering stew. Her father a looming figure by the fire, broad-shouldered, face line like cracked earth. "Miss Harlan," he said, eyeing me with the wariness of a man who'd seen too many strangers bring change. "Welcome." Dinner was a minefield. Talk of crop yields and council meetings. Elias's name dropped like bait. I held my tongue, focusing on the venison, but Clara's foot nudged mine under the table. A secret Morse code. As her father retired early with a grunt about dawn chores, we slipped out to the barn, flashlights cutting swaths through the gloom. There, amid hay bales and the soft snort of horses, she broke. "He's doubling down. Says if I don't say yes to Elias by New Year's, he'll sell off parcels to developers." Force my hand. Tears tracked her cheeks. Silver in the beam. "I love this place, Elsie. It's Mama's ghost in every beam. But staying means dying inside." I pulled her close, the scent of hay and her shampoo mingling. "Then we find a way out. Together." Our kiss there was desperate, flavored with salt and urgency, hands fumbling, breaths mingling in the dark. It was claim and comfort, a vow against the encroaching cold. But vows are fragile in the face of blood. That night, as I lay on the guest room cot, the house groaned like it mourned. Sleep came fitful, dreams of fences closing in. Morning brought confrontation. Her father at the kitchen table, newspaper folded crisp, eyes hard. "Heard you're the podcast lady. Stirring up trouble with your talk of choices." I met his gaze. Steady. "Not trouble, sir. Truth." He leaned forward, voice low thunder. "Truth don't pay the taxes here. Clara's got a path laid out. You best not muddy it." The warning landed, but Clara's hand on my arm steadied me. We left soon after, her promising to visit soon, me carrying the weight of his stare like a stone in my pocket. Back in Portland, the city felt alien, too loud, too free. Her calls grew sporadic, laced with exhaustion, arguments with Lena, who wanted more than shadows, pleas from Elias, earnest in his obliviousness. January bit deep, frost etching my windows. One night, as I edited an episode on Betrayal's Bite, cheering, voice shattered. He found the poems. The ones to you, printed from my emails. Burned them in the sink. Horror clawed me. "Clara, don't. Call me Harlan here. That's who I am with you." A sob. "He's sending me to a retreat. Conversion therapy, he calls it. 3 weeks in Bend, with counselors who promise to fix what's broken." The word broke something in me. "No. You fight this." "I am." Defiance flickered. "Meet me halfway. Timberline Lodge. Valentine's." "I'll slip away," I agreed, heart a war drum. But as weeks crawled by, doubt crept, her texts thinning, silences stretching. The retreat loomed, a specter. On the eve of her departure, she called one last time. "I love you, Elsie. Whatever happens, love you too." The words were lifeline, but the line went dead, and the dark closed in. February arrived cloaked in ice. The kind that glazed Portland's bridges and turned every step into a gamble. I paced my studio, the console mocking me with its idle glow. Episodes stacking up half-finished because focus eluded like smoke. Harlan's absence was a void. Her texts reduced to cryptic check-ins from the retreat in Bend. Prayers and puzzles. Miss your voice. I knew the drill, those places peddled poison as cure. Twisting desire into disease with scripture and shame. My own brush with conversion whispers in high school had left scars. A youth group leader's concern talks. The isolation that followed. For her, daughter of the soil, it must have been vivisection. Valentine's dawned brittle. Skies leaden as I drove east toward Timberline Lodge. The mountain snowfields a blinding expanse that mirrored the ache in my chest. The lodge itself was a relic of ambition, massive timbers. Stone fireplaces roaring against the chill. A grandeur that felt both sheltering and stern. I checked in under a false name. Heart hammering as I scanned the lobby. Skiers in neon. Couples entwined. But no Harlan. Hours ticked by. Coffee in the Cascade dining room going cold. A futile hike along the trails where wind whipped like accusations. By dusk, as the sun bled orange across the glaciers, my phone buzz delayed. Father intercepted. Forgive me. Forgive. The word tasted like ash. I typed back, fury masked as calm. Come when you can. Doors open. But inside, betrayal bloomed, not hers, but the world's. The inexorable pull of family that dragged her under. I spent the night in the room's clawfoot tub, steam rising like ghosts, replaying our barn kiss. The way her laughter had thawed Monroe's frost. Sleep came in fits. Dreams of her vanishing into wheat fields, calling my name into emptiness. She arrived 2 days later, unannounced, slipping into the lobby like a shadow at midnight. Disheveled, hair loose, coat dusted with highway grime, but her eyes burned with the ferocity of survival. I drove straight through, she gasped, collapsing into my arms amid the indifferent murmur of late-night check-ins. Told them I needed air. One night, that's all I could steal. We fled to the room, the door clicking shut like a seal on secrets. There, in the dim lamplight, she unraveled tales of the retreat sterile rooms, counselors with Bibles and clipboards probing her wounds, group sessions where women wept for loves they'd never reclaim. They made us write letters to our temptations, burn them at dawn, she whispered, curled against me on the four-poster bed. I wrote to you. To Lena. But I couldn't light the match. Rage and relief warred in me as I held her. Fingers tracing the tension knotted in her shoulders. You're out now. That's what matters. For tonight. Her voice cracked, the weight of return pressing down. We made love then. Urgent and unhurried, bodies mapping the familiar. Breath sinking like a shared pulse. It was reclamation. Her hands fierce on my skin. Murmurs of my name like talismans against the dark. Afterward, tangled in sheets that smelled of lodge soap and her. We talked escape. Portland as haven. Her adjunct gig expanding to full-time. The ranch sold in parcels if need be. Dreams are cheap, she said, tracing patterns on my arm. Reality's the ranch hands who look to me for paychecks. The students who see me as steady. Leaving fractures everything. Including you? I propped on an elbow, searching her face. including us. The admission hung. Raw. Dawn crept in too soon. Coffee brewed on the room's hot plate as we plotted logistics. Her resignation letter drafted on my laptop. Job listings bookmarked for queer-friendly colleges up north. But as she dressed, phone in hand, the facade cracked. A call from home, her father's voice, tinny through the speaker. Clara, where are you? The counselor's worried. I'm fine. Dad, her tone steel, but eyes pleading with me. Just clearing my head. Head home. Elias is waiting. This nonsense ends now. Click. She sagged. The fight leaching out. He won't stop. It's like the land owns him. And he owns me. Then break the chain. I cupped her face. Desperate. Come with me. Today. Tears welled. But resolve flickered. One more week. I'll wrap the semester. Pack quiet. Meet you in Portland. The kiss goodbye was a bruise. Her truck vanishing down the mountain road into mist. Back in the city. Hope was a fragile flame. I aired an episode on survival's cost. Her anonymous story woven in. Listeners flooding with support. But silence from her stretched. Days bleeding into a week. Then 2. Texts unanswered. Calls to voicemail. Panic set in. Had they locked her down? The retreat's grip tighter? On a rain-lashed March evening, as cherry blossoms clung stubborn to branches, Lena called the painter. Voice sharp as shattered glass. You Elsie? The podcast voice she's obsessed with. My blood iced. Yeah. Where is she? Gone. Packed and left Monroe last night. Said something about freedom. Then drove off without a word. Her father's tearing the town apart. Cops involved. Elias playing the jilted hero. Relief crashed with dread. Did she say where? North. Toward you. I hope. Pause. Edged with her own hurt. She loved you. You know. Fiercer than she ever let on. The line died. And I bolted, packing a bag. Keys in hand. Driving the dark highways toward the coast. Intuition pulling like tide. Hours later. Near Astoria. My phone lit, Bridgewater Inn. Room 7. Don't tell a soul. The inn was a weathered clapboard on the Columbia's edge. Waves crashing like judgment below. She waited on the balcony, wrapped in a throw blanket, face gaunt but eyes alive. I did it, she said as I swept her into embrace. Told him everything. The poems. The podcast. You. He just stared. Then said I was no daughter of his. Grief twisted in me for her loss. But triumph too she'd chosen. We holed up there for days. The world reduced to salt air and stolen time. Walks on the beach where driftwood spelled our names. Nights of stories swapped like treasures. She spoke of Lena with closure's grace. Of friendship. Not flame. And of the ranch's future. Parcels deeded to workers who'd earned them. It's not abandonment, she insisted. Voice steady by the window. It's inheritance. Reshaped. Portland called us back. Her settling into my bungalow with boxes of books and ghosts. Spring unfurled tentative. Daffodils pushing through soil. Her adjunct offer from Portland State materializing like grace. Whispers thrive. Her now co-hosting off-air. her voice no longer veiled. Listeners sensed the shift, stories pouring in of their own unchaining. But Monroe's shadow lingered. One April afternoon, as we picnicked in Laurelhurst Park, cherry petals drifting like confetti, a letter arrived, forwarded from her old address. Her father's script, formal as a deed, land's yours if you return. Conditions unchanged. Blood calls to blood. She folded it away, hand finding mine. Blood doesn't define us. This does. Squeeze. Yet doubt seated. Late nights when she'd wake gasping. Dreams of burning fields. Arguments flaring over her hesitance to go public. My impatience a mirror to old wounds. May brought the fracture. A call from Elias, not threat, but plea. She's family here. Elsie. Come for Memorial Day. Talk sense into her. I relate it, watching her face crumple. He means well. Thinks love's a transaction. Go if you need to, I said, though it's scorched. But come back whole. She went. Alone. The drive a gauntlet. Days passed in radio silence. My studio a cage of worry. Then, the podcast line rang mid-broadcast, anonymous. Her voice a specter. Elsie. I can't. The hook tore in. Where are you? Home. He showed me the will, everything to me. If I conform. Elias waiting. The town watching. It's too much. Betrayal's blade twisted, not of her heart, but the world's crush. Fight. Harlan. For us. A sob. I thought I could. But this is bone deep. Click. The show ended in static. Listeners none the wiser. I drove through night to Monroe. The ranch gate ajar like invitation to ruin. She met me on the porch. Elias's ring glinting on her finger. Trial. She swore. But the sight gutted. It's politics, she pleaded. Buy time. Time for what? We argued in whispers. Her father's silhouette in the window a sentinel. You left for this? I hissed. Tears hot. I left for air. This is oxygen tax. Despair etched her. Dawn broke with my departure. Her silhouette shrinking. The ring a shackle I'd failed to break. Summer scorched in. Portland's heat a furnace for grief. Whispers faltered. My voice hollow as I aired reruns. Lena reached out. A tentative bridge. Coffees turned confessions. Her art mirroring my ache. But Harlan haunted, postcards from Monroe. Unsigned whispers echo. Forgive the silence. Forgiveness came slow. In fragments. A solo hike where I screamed her name to the winds. Episodes on betrayal's anatomy drawing catharsis. By August, resolve hardened, I wouldn't wait in limbo. Final call. Her voice frayed. The wedding September. End it clean. No. Defiance surged. You end it. Or I will. By living. Click. The line severed. But so did something vital. Fall leaves turned, mirroring the turn inward. I poured into the show. Stories of rebirth from ashes. My own unfolding quiet. Harlan's absence became teacher. Love's not possession, but permission to fly even if paths diverge. Yet in dark hours, doubt whispered, had I pushed too hard? Or not enough? Monroe's pull. Society's script, they were villains. But we were human. Flawed in our yielding. Autumn's palette bled across the northwest. Maples igniting in defiant blazes against the encroaching gray. Portland pulsed with its seasonal rhythm. Farmers' markets heaped with pumpkins. The faint spice of cider in the air, but for me, the colors rang false. A veneer over the hollow-eyed carved from Harlan's choice. The bungalow felt vast. Echoes in every corner. The mug she'd claimed with its chipped rim. The bookshelf gap where her McCullers had sat. Whispers from the edge limped on. My monologues laced with a bitterness listeners mistook for depth. Emails pouring in with their own tales of loves lost to legacy. Your voice carries the weight, one wrote. If only they knew how it dragged. I threw myself into the work. Guest spots at queer film fests in Seattle. Panels on media's role in mending fractures. Lena became an unlikely anchor. Her studio in the industrial district a chaos of canvases and turpentine. Where we'd talk late over takeout. Her laugh a bomb without demand. She chose the cage, Lena said one night. Brush paused mid-stroke. A swirl of indigo bleeding into crimson. But cages have keys. You were hers. Was. The word tasted final. A door slamming. Yet dreams betrayed me. Harlan's whisper in the dark. Her hand slipping from mine into weak gold waves. I'd wake sweating. The podcast console blinking like an accusation. Had I listened enough? Or too much? September crept in humid. The wedding date a specter on my calendar. Mark then scratched out. I drove to the coast that weekend. Astoria's salt winds scouring clean. The Bridgewater in a masochistic pull. Room 7 stood empty. But I sat on the balcony anyway. Waves below a relentless sermon on letting go. A local bar drew me after dim. With darts and the tang of fried clams. Where a woman with cropped hair and a sailor's tattoo bought me a stout. Conversation sparked easy. Her stories of deckhand days on the Columbia a distraction's mercy. But as her hand brushed mine, Harlan's ghost recoiled me. Not yet, I murmured, excusing to the rain-slick street. Back home. The fracture deepened. The package arrived mid-October. No return address. A worn journal. Pages filled with her script. Poems unfinished. Our nights etched in ink. Tucked inside. A note. Burn if you must. To keep. And remember I fought. Fury warred with ache. I clutched it through a sleepless night. Words blurring with tears. The next episode aired raw. Betrayal isn't always malice. Sometimes it's survival's cruel math. Listeners surged. The show's feeds lighting up. But validation rang hollow. Monroe intruded then. Insidious. A listener from the valley emailed, heard your Harlan story. That's my town. Clara Harlan's marrying Elias Crow next month. Big to-do at the church. Thought you should know. Photos attached. Her in white lace at a fitting. Smile brittle as frost. His arm possessive around her waist. The image seared. A public staking of what we'd whispered private. I confronted the mirror that night. Face gaunt. Eyes shadowed. Enough. I booked the flight. Rental to Monroe, not to disrupt, but to witness. To sever the tether. The town unfolded unchanged. Main Street quaint with harvest banners. The air crisp with applewood smoke. I checked into a motel on the edge. The rusty spurs neon winking invitation. Inside. It was as she described, scarred bar. Jukebox crooning Merle Haggard. Loggers nursing beers with calloused hands. I ordered whiskey neat. The burn steadying. And that's when eyes found me. A cluster of women at a corner table. Faces familiar from her tales, the college set. Queers in hiding. One approached. Mid-40s. Silver streak in her bob. You're Elsie. The voice. No accusation. Just knowing. Her name was Marin. English prof who'd mentored Harlan. She talks about you still. In code. At faculty lounge. Talks. Hope flickered. Treacherous. Marin slid onto the stool. Voice low. The ring's off. Weddings postponed. Elias caught wind of complications. And her father's health stroke last week. She's caretaking. But cracking. The whiskey soured. Why tell me? Because she won't. Pride's her armor. But it's rusting. Marin scribbled an address on a napkin. The ranch's back gate. Go tomorrow. Before it's too late. I left at dawn. Truck bumping the dirt road. Heart a staccato. The gate creaked open. Acres stretching gold under weak sun. She was in the field. Hay fork in hand. Silhouette bent against the wind. Harlan, I called. Voice carrying. She froze. Then turned. Face streaked with dirt and dawn light. Eyes wide with shock and something softer. Elsie. How? Doesn't matter. I closed the distance. The fork clattering down. Embrace came fierce. Her body shaking with sobs held too long. The wedding. A lie to buy peace. She pulled back. Searching my face. I couldn't do it. Not after you. But Dad. He's fading. Demands the legacy intact. Even from his bedside. We walked the furrows. Her recounting the chaos. Stroke sudden theft of his speech. Leaving commands in glares and gestures. Elias's wounded retreat. Town tongues wagging. I stayed for duty, she confessed. Kicking a clod. But it's killing the girl who called you. Then leave the duty. Words simple. Seismic. We reached the barn. The shadows a time machine, hay scent thick. Horses nickering soft. There. Against the wall. Kiss reignited, hungry. Illing. Her hands framing my face like fragile. I burned the journal, she murmured against my lips. Kept the words in me. We made plans in whispers. Her father's care handed to a nurse. Land trust to preserve it wild. Not wedded. Portland waited. Arms open. But as noon arched, a truck rumbled. Elias. Face thunderous. Spotting us from afar. Clara. Who's this? Panic flashed. But she stepped forward. Hand in mine. Elsie. The one I choose. He advanced. Voice cracking. After everything, the ranch isn't a bride price. Steel in her tone. It's mine to steward. Not sell. He deflated. Hurt raw. I thought we were building something. You were building his dream. Gentle. Final. He drove off. Dust cloud a farewell. Afternoon brought reckoning. Her father's room. Monitors beeping soft. He eyed me from the bed, withered but fierce, grasping her hand. Words failed him, but I spoke betrayal, plea, resignation. She leaned in, whispering assurances. Then to me, he sees now. Not approval, but understanding. We left at dusk. Her bag light in the truck bed books. Chloe. A single photo of her mother. The drive to Portland was sacrament. Radio low on Lucinda Williams. Her head on my shoulder. Miles mending fractures. The city embraced us. Bungalow alive with her presence. Dinner of takeout Thai. Laughter bubbling as we unpacked. Winter whispered early, but warmth held. Whispers evolved. Her voice joining mine on air, anonymous no more. Stories co-woven. Listeners celebrated. The feud with silence won. Yet scars lingered. Her nightmares of burning deeds. My flinches at unopened mail. Love, we learn, was tending those patient, persistent. One January eve. Snow dusting the studio roof. She knelt by the console. Marry me, Elsie. Not for legacy, but us. Tears pricked. Yes. Ring simple, silver band etched with wheat and waves. Spring bloom triumphant. Wedding small at the waterfront. Lena officiating. Marin toasting. Portland's lights our canopy. Vows exchanged. In whispers and roars. I choose you. But fate, ever the dramatist, twisted. A call midsummer, her father. Rallying brief. Requesting her return. One last harvest, she said. I shadowed. Then goodbye. I nodded. Trust rebuilt. She went. Reaper in the fields. But returned weekly, soil under nails. Stories rich. September's end brought closure. His passing quiet. We'll read with clauses for her freedom, land preserved. No strings. Grief came. Shared in porch swings and midnight talks. From ashes, we rose. Her novel drafted. Whispers syndicating coast to coast. Monroe faded to memory. A chapter closed humanely, not conquest, but compassion. Yet in quiet, her whisper lingered. You heard me first, and in that, salvation. The harvest moon hung low over Portland that October. A swollen orb casting silver across the Willamette, turning the bridges into veins of light. Harlan and I stood on the deck of our new place, a modest floating home on the river's edge. Bought with her book advance and my syndication checks, watching barges glide silent, their wakes lapping like applause for our improbable peace. 6 months since the wedding. 3 since her father's quiet exit. And still, the world felt borrowed. A grace note in a symphony of storms. She'd taken to calling it our driftwood life, pieced from splinters but sturdy against the current. Her novel, Furrows Unbound, had landed a small press deal in July, a semi-autobiographical weave of ranch roots and rebel hearts, its pages echoing our podcast confessions without naming names. Critics called it a quiet thunder. Readers wrote of recognitions that cracked them open. Launch night at Powell's had been electric. Her reading from the stage. Voice steady as she voiced the unnamed lover's plea. In cipher, the crowd hushed. Then roaring. I'd sat front row. Ring glinting under the spots. Pride a fierce bloom. But success carried shadows. Monroe's echoes persisted. Old acquaintances friending her online. Probing with veiled judgments. Elias's occasional email. Cordial but laced with what-ifs. He's healing, she'd say. Deleting threads. We all are. Yet I'd catch her staring at field photos on her phone, thumb hovering as if to till digital soil. My own doubts mirrored. Whispers now a network darling. But the anonymity that birthed it felt lost. My face on promo posters a vulnerability I'd never sought. One crisp November morning, as fog cloaked the river like a shroud, trouble docked unbidden. A letter from the ranch's attorney, forwarded, formal, detailing a codicil her father had slipped in his final days. A clause tying a portion of the land trust to familial reconciliation. Weaponized. It summoned her back for arbitration. Elders from the town council presiding like a jury of ghosts. She read it at the kitchen table. Coffee steaming untouched. Face paling to ash. It's a trap. They want absolution. Or the acres. Rage simmered in me. Hot as the cast iron skillet sizzling eggs. We don't owe them. Sell it off. Let developers pave paradise. Her laugh was hollow. Edged. That's their fear, that I'll erase what he built. But it's mine too. Elsie. The dirt under my nails. Mama's recipes in the pantry. She folded the paper. Eyes distant. I have to go. Face it head on. Alone? The question unspoken. But she heard. Come. Witness. But this is my soil. The flight to Eugene was turbulence incarnate. Skies mirroring our mood, Harlan white-knuckled. Me sketching episode ideas on a napkin to distract. Monroe welcomed with deceptive calm. Orchards heavy with late apples. The air tart as regret. The ranch house stood sentinel. Porch swing still. But inside. Changes whispered. A nurse's kit by the door. Photos rearranged to include her mother's smile sans the stern patriarch. The arbitration convened in the barn, neutral ground. Hay-scented and vast. Council members in flannel and Stetsons. Faces etched with the town's bifurcated soul. Progressives who'd marched for marriage equality. Conservatives clinging to creed. Elias sat silent. Eyes downcast. A peripheral wound. Marin flanked us. Legal eagle in unexpected boots. Arguing the trust's intent. Preservation. Not penance. Voices rose like dust motes in sunbeams. One elder decrying city influences. Another praising her book's honest root. Harlan spoke last. Standing tall amid the bales. Voice a river carving stone. This land isn't a ledger of sins. It's sustenance for workers who till it. For stories it holds. I honor Dad by letting it breathe. Not by binding it to old chains. Silence fell. Profound. The chairwoman. A wiry widow with eyes like Harlan's. Nodded slow. Blood calls. But so does growth. Trust stands. Relief crashed. Hugs exchanged awkward across aisles. Even Elias. Murmur of be happy like olive branch. We drove out as dusk fell. Harlan's hand in mine. The claws dissolved like mist. It's over, she breathed. But her grip tightened. As if testing solidity. Back in Portland. Winter hunkered. Holidays a gauntlet of chosen family. Lena's solstice party with queer carolers and spiked eggnog. Our wedding album poured over by podcast faithful at a listener brunch. Yet under the cheer. Fishers. Her manuscript revisions stalling. My episodes veering preachy on societal scripts. One January night, Snow blanketing the floating home's deck. Argument erupted over dinner, takeout foe gone cold. You're retreating, I accused. Chopsticks clattering. Book calls. But you stare at the river like it's calling you back. She bristled. Eyes flashing. And you're pushing syndication meetings. Tours that leave me solo. We said partnership. Not parallel lives. Truth stung. Mutual. We'd rebuilt. But on fault lines. Her grief for the ranch a private tide. My ambition a shield against loss. I fear losing you again, I admitted. Voice small. She softened. Reaching across. You won't. But I need space to root here. Not transplant. Therapy followed. Couple sessions with a queer counselor in the Pearl. Her office a haven of plants and plush chairs. We unpacked. My control as armor from youth's rejection. Her duty as echo of mother's martyrdom. Sessions peeled layers. Revealing not breakage. But bend love as verb. Active and aching. Spring thawed us. Cherry blossoms carpeting the waterfront paths where we'd walk. Hands linked. Plotting futures. Her tenure track at PSU. My podcast expanding to video. Intimate interviews in lantern-lit lofts. Harlan's second book brewed. This 1 hour's. A duet of voices. Whispers made manifest. But summer tested anew. A Monroe invite, the Harvest Fair. Neutral ground. A booth for her signing. Closure, she urged. Show them the woman I became. I went. Wary. The fair a whirl of cotton candy and country croon. Stalls hawking pies and prejudice. Her table drew crowds. Locals tentative. Then thawing as she signed. Sharing snippets of furrows unbound. Elias appeared mid-afternoon. Beer in hand. Smile genuine. Proud of you. Clara. Harlan now, she corrected gentle. And thanks. He nodded to me. No grudge. You too. Suit. Evening brought dance. The band's fiddle wailing under strung lights. Her pulling me to the floor amid stares that softened to shrugs. We swayed. Bodies synced. The town's pulse forgiving. Fall deepen. Our rhythm steady, until the call from Marin, a student in crisis. Queer kid from the valley. Echoing Harlan's youth. She needs you, Marin said. Mentor her. Harlan went. Weekends in Monroe's motel. Guiding the girl through closets and calls. I joined once. Witnessing her grace, the way she listened. Voice a bridge. You're planting seeds, I told her after. Driving home under stars. And harvesting peace. Kiss at a stoplight. River glinting beside. Yet climax brewed unseen. November's Eve. As election winds howled, the nation's fractures mirroring ours, her phone rang insistent. The student? Hysterical. They're coming for me. Church elders. Saying I'm poison. We raced south. Tires eating miles. Arriving to chaos. The kid barricaded in her dorm. Council pounding demands. Harlan mediated. Voice thunder. This town's legacy isn't shame. It's shelter. Standoff broke at dawn. Kids safe in our Portland guest room. Elders retreating chastened. News rippled, local paper hailing the Harlan stand. Our podcast amplifying to national ears. Winter wrapped us then. The kid, Jamie, blooming under our roof. Her art joining Lena's circle. Harlan's eyes shone. Purpose renewed. We didn't just survive. We sowed, but in quiet. Reflection. The betrayal's scar. Society's script we'd rewritten. Love, we knew, was rebellion sustained, whispers to roars, dark to dawn. December's chill etched frost patterns on our floating home's windows, turning the river view into a gallery of fleeting art. Harlan and I had transformed the space over months, bookshelves groaning with dual collections. A shared desk by the sliders where her laptop hummed beside my mic rig. Jamie, the kid from Monroe, had become fixture. 19. All sharp wit and watercolor sketches. Crashing on the futon while auditing classes at PSU. Her presence was chaos and gift, late-night debates on Audre Lorde. Her laughter chasing shadows from corners we'd forgotten. Whispers from the edge crested then. The Jamie episode aired anonymous at first, then with her bold consent going viral. Downloads spiking from Portland pods to Brooklyn lofts. Invites flooded. TEDx slots. NPR spots. A docuseries pitch from a Seattle indie. Harlan's second book, Echoes in the Current, sold pre-orders in the thousands. Its pages a tapestry of our entwined threads, podcast confessions braided with ranch reveries, betrayals bite softened to wisdom's yield. Yet abundance bred its own tempests. One sleet-lashed afternoon, as I prepped for a live remote from the Alberta Arts District, Harlan's face drained at her email, an offer from a Eugene press, full professorship in creative writing, with adjunct duties at the community college. It's home soil, she said, voice tentative over cocoa mugs. Teaching where I started. But free. Jealousy pricked. Irrational. Portland was our anchor. The river our vein. And us? Commutes. Weekends stolen. She set the mug down. I steady. Video calls. Visits. Or. We uproot. Together. The proposal hung. Seismic. My roots here ran deep. The studio's hum. Listener meetups and dive bars. Lena's Sunday suppers. But hers? Entwined with valley veins. The lands call a siren's song. Nights followed in negotiation. Walks along the esplanade where barges chugged like metronomes. Therapy sessions unpacking ambition's shadow. I fear tethering you, she confessed once. Wind whipping her scarf. Like Dad's will. Binding what should flow. And I fear drifting apart, I countered. Hand in hers. Like those calls, close. But cracked. Resolution came gradual, a trial run. Her accepting the post with hybrid terms, Portland base. Eugene Thursdays through Sundays. We mapped it on the kitchen chalkboard, drive times. Podcast syncs. Date nights midweek. Jamie weighed in. Rye. Love's not stationary. It's the chase. Spring surged. Verdant and vindicating. Harlan's commute became ritual. Her truck loaded with manuscripts. My kisses lingering at dawn departures. Fridays brought reunions. Her bursting through the door with valley tales. Students' breakthroughs mirroring her own. Echoes launched to acclaim. Tour stops blending our worlds. Readings in Monroe's library, where elders now applauded. Elias toasting from the back row. Summer solstice marked pivot. A vow renewal on the riverbank. Just us and the current. Words exchanged barefoot in the shallows. Through floods and falls, she murmured. Ring renewed. I choose the flow with you. But autumn's turn brought trials echo. Jamie. Emboldened. Outed herself at a college rally, banners waving. Chants rising, only for backlash to crash. Online trolls from Monroe's fringes. Death threats veiled as doctrine. Harlan, mid-class in Eugene, fielded the call. Jamie sobbing in our living room. Police at the door. We converged that night. Harlan speeding the interstate. Me barricading with chamomile and calls to allies. The threat traced to a council holdout. Unrepentant in his cups at the rusty spur. Marin rallied. Lawsuits whispered. Community vigils lit. Harlan faced him down next visit, not in fury, but fact. Your words wound kids like her once was me. Legacy's protection. Not poison, he crumbled. Apologies scrawled in shaky hand. The troll account shuttered. Jamie healed public. Her art show in Portland's galleries. Whispers episode a manifesto of resilience. The scare bonded us tighter. Family forged in fire. Not blood alone. Winter waned into renewal. Harlan's tenure secured. Her class is a beacon for Valley queers bussing in. My docuseries greenlit. Filming starting with her as muse, intimate shots in the studio. Her whisper the thread. One March Eve. As cherry petals stormed the deck. She handed me a positive test. Our flows branching. Adopt. Tears came. Joy's torrent. Agency paperwork piled. Home studies passed by summer. A toddler joined Mia. 3. All curls and curiosity. From foster systems churn. Her laughter filled the floating home. Harlan's lullabies a bridge from ranch rhythms to river rockings. Challenges persisted. Mia's nightmares echoing her birth mother's loss. Our schedules juggling like circus acts. But in fractures. Grace. Podcast episodes on chosen kin. Harlan's third book gestating on parenting's wilds. Monroe visits evolved, fair booths now ours. Harlan teaching workshops. Elders seeking her counsel on divides. Climax crested that fall. Harvest Moon Redux. A town hall in Monroe. Harlan keynoting on roots and rivers. Mending class chasms. Gender's graces. Love's unbound. I watched from wings. Mia on hip. As she spoke. Society scripts us straight lines. High walls. But humanity thrives in curves. In crossings. I betrayed no one by choosing me. I honored all by choosing us. Applause thundered. Bridges built in echoes. Elias approached after. Partner on arm, a quiet man from Salem, handshake firm. You were right. Flow over fence. Back home. As leaves turn. Reflection settled. Betrayals by Kitsch had forged this. From anonymous voice to named life. Dark whispers to dawn declarations. Society's norms crumbled not in war, but where patient persistence. Human heart's quiet siege. One night. Mia asleep. Harlan and I on the deck. River murmuring below. Remember the first call? She whispered. Head on my shoulder. Like yesterday. Smile shared. You spilled shame, I caught grace. And now. Her fingers laced mine. Now we spill stories. To each other. To the world. Kiss soft. Profound. The moon hung witness. Full and forgiving. In that. The tale closed, not with tidy bow. But open horizon. Love as ongoing rebellion. Freedom's fragile. Fierce flame. We whispered on. Into the dark no more.